North Korean soldiers have been shipped into Russia in thousands. It's only a matter of time before Russian soldiers at the front lines are replaced with North Korean forces.
So the Pentagon says North Korea sent about 10,000 troops to aid Russia in its war against Ukraine. NATO says some troops already deployed to Russia's Kursk region, which is an area where Russia really struggles to push back against Ukrainian troops.
Putin had a choice: either mobilize more soldiers through conscription or ask his ally Kim Jong-un for help. Will 10,000 DPRK soldiers help Russia win the war against Ukraine? And how will this partnership play out? On the 29th of October, 2024, NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte finally confirmed that North Korean soldiers had been deployed to help Russia in the war against Ukraine.
The deployment of North Korean troops represents a significant escalation in the DPRK's ongoing involvement in Russia's illegal war. NATO calls on Russia and the DPRK to cease these actions immediately.
According to the New York Times, the North Korean soldiers are expected to take part in Russia's battle in the region. The DPRK soldiers have allegedly been offered Russian uniforms as well as passports for disguise.
This video, according to Ukraine, shows North Korean soldiers at a training ground in Russia's Far East. They're wearing what appears to be Russian military uniform, potentially preparing to fight in Ukraine.
But just how many North Korean soldiers have deployed to Russia? On the 28th of October, 2024, the US Pentagon announced that Russia has received up to 10,000 North Korean troops. The soldiers were transported on two 76 planes to a military airfield in western Russia before they were finally sent to the Kursk region. A video released by a Russian soldier on a Telegram channel gives a clear view of what this looks like.
These pictures of North Koreans training in the far east of Russia have sparked a lot of speculation over Russia's plans in Ukraine.
But these are not just regular soldiers. They are among North Korea's best and reportedly serve in an elite unit of the DPRK army. Right now, the West is tense because at first, the soldiers were only seen being trained at Russia's military camp bases. However, as reported by Pentagon's Deputy Press Secretary, Sabrina Singh, a portion of those soldiers have already moved closer to Ukraine, and there is concern that Putin might use these soldiers in combat against Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk Oblast.
Professor Rosman, these North Korean troops are in the Kursk region. What does that tell us about their role at this time?
It tells us that North Korea is just delighted with this opportunity. It's been isolated, it suffered pressure from many countries, and now it's broken out of its isolation, and it improves its military training and probably gets some big advantages in its arms as well.
In response to the imminent threat, Ukraine has requested its allies supply it more weapons and allow for deeper strikes into Russia, highlighting the fact that they had raised concerns of Putin's intention to use DPRK soldiers in the war effort much earlier, but were widely ignored.
Well, just in the last half hour, the US Pentagon says Ukraine would not see any new restrictions on the use of US weapons against North Korean forces should they enter the fight against Ukrainian forces.
When news of DPRK soldiers being deployed to Russia first broke out, the Kremlin in Russia denied the allegations, calling it fake news. However, on October 24th, at the 2024 BRICS summit, Russia's President Vladimir Putin was asked this very same question, and he did not deny it.
Images are a serious thing. If there are images, they must reflect something. We have never doubted that North Korea takes our agreement on mutual military assistance seriously, but what we do and how we do it is our business.
Hours earlier, Russia's lower house unanimously ratified a new mutual assistance treaty with North Korea, a move which did little to dismiss mounting speculation that Pyongyang was sending troops to help with the war in Ukraine.
According to NATO's Secretary General, over the 2.5 years, the war has spanned. Russia has suffered a massive military loss of more than 600,000 troops, including wounded soldiers. He called Moscow desperate and insisted Russia could not sustain the war in Ukraine without military support. Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, also confirmed this during an interview with The Times India. He claimed that about 650,000 Russian soldiers had been wounded or killed. But in a recent survey done by BBC Russia, only 70,000 soldiers were reported dead. While it's unclear which of these statistics is more accurate, there is no doubt Russia's army has suffered a significant loss in manpower, hence the importation of DPRK soldiers.
The other thing it shows us is how desperate Mr. Putin is for manpower. I mean, he's losing 1,200 Russian soldiers per day. And over the course of this war, more than 530,000 casualties, Russian casualties. And it's not like he's being very honest with the Russian people about the losses that he has sustained in this fight. So it's a definite sign of Putin's weakness, no question about that.
Besides the thousands of troops Russia is receiving from North Korea, the US government has also reported that North Korea is supplying Russia military hardwares, missiles, and launchers. Russia may not have enough soldiers to sustain the war in Ukraine. However, with enough missiles and launchers, the country might just fight the war for a couple more years, depending on whether the US decides to give Ukraine its full support or not. But just when it seemed as though the DPRK soldiers could be the solution to the conflict in Ukraine, intelligence sources released an intercepted audio that shows the hate Russian soldiers have for their new allies.
18 North Korean servicemen who attempted to escape from the positions of Russian occupation forces in the Kursk region were detained by Russians in the Komarishsky district of the Bryansk region. Union was informed of this by sources in the main intelligence directorate.
North Korean soldiers are reportedly fleeing their positions at front lines in Russia, raising great concerns for Putin. Since the soldiers were shipped into Russia, many questioned their experience level. The Wall Street Journal also reported that the soldiers were mostly young military men and inexperienced trench warfare.
What about the capabilities of North Korean troops? The Wall Street Journal reported that video evidence, intelligence reports suggest that they're likely young men in the early stages of military conscription, not experienced in trench warfare.
These reports questioned the initial claim that the DPRK soldiers deployed to Russia were part of North Korea's elite force. Another question many have asked is how Russia intends to use the soldier, with some commentators stating Russia sees the soldier as disposable.
They will be used, but it also suggests that they will likely be used in mass assaults, effectively cannon fodder, the Russians not really caring for their lives, hoping that they will cause a breakthrough, but not necessarily expecting an effective commitment. That suggests these probably aren't all that much special forces. Among North Korea's 200,000 or so special forces, some are really very capable. These may not be at the top end.
But the cause of desertion is more than fear. Ukraine has incentivized it. The country has established a project called I Want to Live that calls on North Korean soldiers to surrender to Ukrainian forces. And it gets even better. Ukraine promises safe conditions of detention, food, and medical care when the soldiers surrender. A video announcing this benefits in Korean language was released as the first set of Pyongyang troops arrived at Russia's border region of Kursk.
Ukraine's I Want to Live project encourages North Korean soldiers in the Russian army to surrender. According to its Telegram channel, the message urges North Korean soldiers not to die in a foreign land and to avoid the fate of many Russian soldiers who won't return home. The project assures that Ukraine will offer asylum to North Korean troops and that Ukraine's prisoner of war camps are ready to accept soldiers of any nationality or belief. It notes that many Russian soldiers who chose to surrender, with comfortable housing, 3 meals a day, and medical care.
The project was established in September 2022 by Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, with its main objective to serve as a 24-hour hotline for Russian soldiers who were willing to surrender to Ukraine. Ukraine's Defense Intelligence representative, Andriy Yusov, reported that more than 300 Russian soldiers have already surrendered to Ukraine forces under this program. He further claimed that over 35,000 applications have been sent mostly from serving Russian military personnel who no longer want to participate in the war. Russia is losing thousands of soldiers by the day, and its efforts to encourage its own citizens to voluntarily enlist in the army has been fruitless.
The Russian Federation is not the Soviet Union. Russia has a finite number of people that it can either choose to put into industry in the civilian sector or into the front line in Ukraine. As of last year, the Russians had a labor deficit of about 5 million workers, which is huge. And right now, the Russian government has been putting out tremendous financial incentives to Russians to go sign up and work in the Russian military. For example, the Russian government now offers up to 2 million rubles for a one-time signing bonus when the average Russian's annual salary is around 1.2 million rubles.
Despite the insane amount of money the state is offering, the citizens have refused, with some even leaving the country. So Putin had no choice but to seek external help. However, the report says the DPRK soldiers have not fought in any real war for over 50 years now.
The other issue is I'm very skeptical of North Korean forces' combat effectiveness. The North Korean military hasn't actually had any real combat experience in real fought wars for over 50 years at this point. So what we're going to be seeing are North Korean units deploying to the front lines to operate with Russian units. And in fact, that might create some seams where more experienced and on the whole better cohesive Russian units will be arm to arm with the North Koreans. And that could create some opportunities for the Ukrainians to create exploit vulnerabilities where those command seams exist.
Then there's the language barrier problem. New York Times reported that on October 25th, Ukrainian military intelligence published 2 intercepts of Russian soldiers, which, according to American Institute for the Study of War, indicates the Russians have concern about DPRK soldiers' ability to adapt to the command culture and Russian language. In one of the published intercepts, an alleged Russian soldier complains about having to communicate with DPRK soldiers through an interpreter, while in another intercept, a Russian soldier, speaking to another soldier, says the phrase, "I want to kill him today. Can I?" After the Koreans. There is also an audio where a Russian soldier can be heard complaining about food rations since the arrival of the North Koreans and refers to them as Chinese.
In intercepted communications from the front line, obtained by the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, Russian soldiers can be heard complaining about their new allies. The North Koreans are codenamed the K Battalion.
Он с кем-то батальона К. Я говорю, он как раз по поводу батальона К рассказывал. Я говорю, а кто получает, говорю, на них оружие, боеприпасы? Мы, говорю, сухпайки, говорю. А кто, говорю, получает? Я говорю, насколько я слышал, получают бригады. Бригады, типа вы получаете.
This proves that there is tension between the North Korean and the Russian army, and without a united front, it's going to be quite difficult to face the Ukrainian force. However, the troops still remain a major concern for NATO, Ukraine, and the West in general, because this may just be the beginning.